scenario. So let's say that you saw someone getting brutalized by a police officer. They were getting beaten, you see blood, and then all of a sudden you hear a shot fire. So what do? Do you report it, or do you stay away from the situation? Most of us agree that we would stay out of the situation. We would just be like, no, I'm scared, okay, I'm gonna go. Well, lately this country has encountered police brutality with racial profiling in most teens due to their race and or actions. Police brutality has been around for a long time. However, with the latest technology there is police officers should be carrying body cameras. There is a long history due to this crime, as well as abuse of power, and there are many statistics to prove it. Police officers should be arrested and tried appropriately in according to their brutal actions. There should be a law in place where body cameras are required to be worn by all police officers, and that way, if they need evidence to back up what happened, they would have the proof. Police brutality should be illegal in this country because of all the children and parents have died to their abuse of power. The definition of police brutality means the use of force exceeding and reasonable to take more control than necessary to accomplish a lawful police purpose. In other words, it's excessive physical force towards the victim. In most cases, you've seen on the news it's most targeting most teens, mostly like African American. So, in the website of southcentralhistory.com, it mentions there's an article of the LA riots of '92. And what caused the sparks was that we had a victim named Rodney King who was beaten. He had blood, he had broken fractures in his brain, he was left dead. And then about 2 weeks later, you had a 15-year-old girl who was also African American. She got shot from the owner's sister because she was accused of stealing an orange juice, but she was trying to put it in her backpack, that way she can take out her wallet to pay for it. So once she started screaming, she got shot behind her head. That was 21 years ago. And now we have the whole Michael Brown in Ferguson. So he was shot by Darren Wilson. Even though Michael was unarmed, Darren thought that he looked suspicious just because he was just crossing the street or so. But before police brutality targeted anyone of color, there were peaceful protests in public areas in the 50s and 60s during the civil rights movement. You would think that in this day and age, racism and racial profiling would be not the reason for police brutality, which just goes to show how police officers are abusive of their power. Besides, they use their power for good to help people. Most of their power should be focused on arresting sociopaths or serial killers. They're intimate threat and not innocent lives. Because of what happened to Michael, Stanford University, the Black Lives Matters group of students there, decided to do a hands-up walkout. So what it is was that it's this movement. It was around like at 1 in the afternoon. You just have like your hands up. You walk out. They didn't care if you were in an office, in a building, at school, or your job. It didn't matter. If you were protesting against the police brutality, you were fine. The demonstrations of the Hands Up walkout on social media are the latest series of nationwide protests against law enforcement in killing African Americans and heavy-handed police tactics and more. With the Rodney King, with the different because it was led to the LA riots. Before it was accusing Letitia for stealing orange juice. After the verdict of the two victims, the 5 policemen and the owner's sister didn't go to jail for the murders. And this important reason why police officers should be arrested for their mistaken killings. And with the latest technology, police officers can carry body cameras in order to see what they were up to. There have been many police brutality cases that have been publicly shown on TV or the internet. And it comes to show how many cases there are. In cases like the police brutality on colored people, there's really no specific statistics shown. Even in the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of '94, uses database reports from CNN says, despite of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of '94 required that the government keep the data about the use of excessive force by law enforcement officers, no such database exists. A study published 14 years ago sought to nail down numbers, but is an author to concede to CNN that only 564 of the nation's 18,000 law enforcement entities participated. The closest thing to a statistic is the FBI's assertion that police responsible for 400 adjustable homicides annually between 2008 and 2012. Body cameras should be obligated for officers on duty because, for example, if they're beating up someone and no one's really recording it from like far away, how is it going to show proof? How are they going to get arrested for that? That's why they should be carrying body cameras at all times. The latter side of the issue would disagree because people tend to fight off higher authority and wants any officer to beat any person that doesn't listen to their Miranda rights. The issue isn't higher authority, it's about authority abusing power to physically beat or kill a victim that isn't suspicious or armed. So for example, 4 years ago we had the Kelly Thomas here in Fullerton. He was a homeless man. He had a mental illness. They believe he had schizophrenia. And he was mistaken for a car thief, even though he wasn't or anything. So he was shot and killed, and he was being really bad. So the video recorded by body cams protects any false accusation, misconduct, or abuse against officers. May help provide valuable evidence in obtaining any accurate witnesses and victim statements. The concept of the story would be privacy issues of any concern for both cops and civilians, how to deal with those concerns is still being evaluated. The use of the body cameras may prevent people from coming forward as incredible witnesses to help assistance with investigations due to the fear of retaliation or fear of the public exposure. Seeing both sides of the story of this body cameras debate can affect the civilians' rights and the Law Enforcement Act of '94 towards officers. So in conclusion, there are many cases surrounding racial hate crimes, but none other than the ones that are happening now. It's 2015, not the 1950s. You would think that its times have changed, but it's not. The government should introduce a law for officers' actions of killing or beating the wrong victims. There are more than cases like Rodney King, Michael Brown, etc. that society doesn't know yet, but many record on their phones, but they're scared or don't even care. Body cameras should be required in all 50 states. Statistics should be recorded, and the history behind the brutality should be educated throughout the
Jake, what did you think?
In the beginning, I was kind of lost on what you were saying, and then you finally got to like your thesis that it was about police brutality and body cameras. I noticed you were reading from your notes a lot, and through the middle of the whole speech. In the beginning, you were good. You were looking at us. You made clear eye contact. When you gave like a story, you were paying attention to us, not your notes. But most of the time, you're reading from your notes. You kind of went from one portion to another. You started talking about Michael Brown, and then you went all the way back to like Rodney King, and you were talking about the civil rights movement, and then right back to Michael Brown. So I was kind of confused on what you were trying to make your point as to that. And then you made a statement that one that I noticed that about Kelly Thomas, that he was shot. I believe that he was actually beaten by 2 officers, not shot by an officer. And then, so I didn't think that was really valid there. And then your conclusion was pretty clear. It made sense that, you know, the body camera should be legal in all 50 states. But for the most part, you were just reading from your notes on that.
All right, well, I think I'd agree with a lot of the things that Jake is saying here. I think you need to be a little bit careful about some of the details that you have. For instance, some of the cases that you mentioned, the police did get arrested, they did get tried, that they were acquitted. Now, the argument might be that body cameras might have changed the outcome in those situations. I think you need to have a stronger argument on that. But the idea that the police are not being held accountable and that what they're doing is legal, police brutality is illegal. You've got a definition of it in your argument. So at the beginning, it sounds like you're suggesting that it's being ignored. And I think that's the better argument, is that it's without the additional evidence from a body camera, that people are too quick to accept the story of the police, that there is no double check on the accuracy of use of force, any of those kinds of things. And then I think you can make your argument using some of the examples about how there's been excessive use of force. I think the Rodney King case is a good example of excessive use of force, but it was prosecuted, it wasn't ignored. By the way, it was caught on camera, which is why it became a big deal. So, and it wasn't a body camera, so that, you know, it doesn't perfectly fit your scenario there. And like he was mentioning with the Kelly Thomas thing, Rodney King was not left for dead because he wasn't dead. He survived and sued, and he died like 4 or 5 years ago. He didn't die in 1992. So I think you want to make sure that you get, you know, your data accurate. In the middle, you stick in the hands up walkout as a protest on this issue, and it felt like it came out of left field. I don't know. I mean, I know that it's connected to what we're talking about, but why it's in the spot that it's in and how you got to it was not clear to me. It just sort of showed up. And I think when Jake was talking about the historical context, and you mentioned the protest movements and the civil rights movement, that same sort of thing, I felt like, well, why is this in this argument, except that there's, I can see a relationship, but it's not very clearly developed, that says that we ought to be cognizant of these sorts of things. We should be making progress. This isn't the same period of time that we had once upon a time, and we think we're past that point, but we aren't. We continue to have these sorts of issues. Maybe that should have been the opening of the speech instead of, like I said, having it in the middle of the speech. Then you've got another argument in the speech that says that under federal law, we're required to keep track of these kinds of cases, and nobody is doing that. Well, who's not complying with the law? If the police departments are failing to comply with the law, that sounds to me like there's something wrong, and that needs to be developed as an argument. Right at the end, I think you get to the discussion about what difference it's Tuesday, not Cyber Monday.
No, it's
Yeah, Cyber Tuesday. You can't be shopping for shoes on Tuesday in class, where I can see it at least. You know, that's pretty damn awful. Man. I mean, I look over there and there's shoes on the thing. I'm going, what the hell?
Waiting for my registration.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, sure. It's okay.
I promise it's
All right. I think the example of Kelly Thomas is a good example of all kinds of abuse. We've got police using excessive force. I don't think there's a doubt that there are lots of cases of excessive use of force by police officers, and you want to make sure that you get those things right. What we need is more. By the way, that's another one that was caught on camera, not a body camera. That kind of thing. So I think those are good examples to say, look, when we have this kind of data, at least prosecutions can take place. But we don't always have that data because there aren't always cameras. It doesn't always happen at a train station where there's a camera. There's not always some guy who gets up in the middle of the night and gets out his video camera in 1992 and photographs stuff that's going on. These kinds of encounters happen on a daily basis, and the only way that we're going to get the kind of evidence that we need in order to determine whether or not a shooting or a use of force was acceptable or unacceptable is if we have this kind of backup. And that's the way I think you need to develop the argument. And I think you'll probably recognize when you watch your speech all of the delivery issues. I'm not going to dwell on that. I think it's pretty straightforward, some of the issues that are going there. You'll know. All right, thank you.